begin by just expressing my deep appreciation to the Zulu Community Regional Ministry and its Martin Luther King Planning Committee for this opportunity to share some thoughts as we celebrate both the legacy and the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. Anytime I am asked to speak on this auspicious occasion of the celebration of his life, I really count it an honor. I always feel when I step into these spaces that I really am not prepared to really reflect on his life. His life was so powerful. It was short, yet amazing. He accomplished more in his 39 years than many of us will accomplish in our own lives that may be so much longer. And so I often step into this space with this sense of humility, thinking, wow, I get an opportunity to share with you my understanding of Dr. King and his messages. Today, I just want to spend a few minutes together, and I hope to create a context for transformation by looking back and remembering. Remember has origins in 14th century English, and it means to keep something or someone in mind. That is, to retain it in memory. In Old French, the word remember means to recall, to bring to mind, to bring back the memory of something or someone. And in Latin, it's to be This is what we are doing today. We are intentionally bringing back to mind Martin Luther King's legacy in order to encourage transformation. Dr. King's legacy stands as a memorial for us and future generations to discuss, to learn from, and to question with curiosity. There is a plethora of information from which to choose, and I would like to describe and look at a few of the subtler inheritances that we often do not reflect on. These inheritances are usually not a part of the traditional list that we spend time talking about and thinking about during Martin Luther King celebration. So I want to be a little bit subtle today. So stay with me as I do this. And the reason I am doing this is because we are remembering, not for information, but for transformation. I'll say that again. We are remembering not for information, but for transformation. We all know that Dr. King was thoroughly committed to the ideal of social, economic, and racial justice. But many of us do not know where this commitment came from. Well, in this sermon entitled, But If Not, we gain insight into what compelled Dr. King to take an unwavering stand for justice. He said, we die. We lose our breath when we refuse to stand up for right and stand up for justice. We become dead men and women walking. We die. His antidote for this gruesome state of being dead people walking was to cast off our fears and stand up for what is right and just, irrespective of the consequences. Cast off fear. Stand up despite the consequences. Because Dr. King said when we give fear and do absolutely nothing about justice, we essentially experience that. Therefore, declare that fear must be combated and courage must be acquired. What I really appreciate about Dr. King is whenever he makes bold statements, he always says how to accomplish it. So he says, courage must be acquired. And he offered us a prescription for the acquisition of courage. He said, connect to God because you plus God is a majority. He further said that God has a way of transforming a numeric minority into a formidable majority. If you didn't get that. So I'm going to say it again. I'm going to slow walk that again so you can hear it. God has a way of transforming a numeric minority into a formidable majority. So today, our first area of transformation is to actualize Martin Luther King's legacy of finding something important, worthwhile, something significant for which you would be willing to take an audacious and fearless stance. Dr. King would have strongly encouraged that the chosen cause be related to justice and freedom. Because he said, it is only when we have a true and enduring distaste for injustice will we avoid that gruesome outcome of becoming dead people walking. This is the challenge. Transform your life from being dead people walking. Coupled with this legacy of having a total abhorrence for injustice is treating people as ends instead of means. Dr. King challenged societal structures that treated Blacks as means to an end. He stated unequivocally that it was Black lives, Black work, and labor that ensured the quality of life and privileges for the majority culture. In his sermon entitled, Why Jesus Called a Man a Fool, Dr. King addressed this issue with boldness. He noted that the great problem facing our nation is the fact that it is the Black man, the Black woman, who, to a large extent, produce the wealth of this nation. And yet, the nation does not have sense enough to share its wealth and power with the very people who made it so. Today, the second area of transformation, as we remember Dr. King's words, the second area is to transform how I treat people, treat others as ends, giving priority to their humanity, regardless of the intersecting identities, their social location, or position. See them as inherently worthy of value, care, and concern. Your inheritance from Dr. King, if you choose to accept it, is to treat people as ends and not as means. Let's continue with our remembrance And remember that we are remembering not for information, but for transformation. Dr. King reminded us that even in the midst of inferior treatment, oppression, violence, threats, he said we have the capacity to hold out and push forward. In his message, Give Us the Ballot, Dr. King stated, there is something in our faith that says, never despair, never give up, never feel that the cause of righteousness and justice is doomed. Never give up, never be in despair. What propelled Dr. King forward to never give up in the struggle for justice and freedom is what he called having a cosmic companion. A cosmic companion who is an other-loving God. A God who loves and cares for the marginalized, for those that are uttered by societal structures and systems. So today, instead of giving up and crumbling and despairing when confronted with injustice and marginalization, remember Dr. King's formula. I said earlier, Dr. King always has a solution. He always has a formula. He always has something to help us figure out how we ought to live when he gives us a directive. And so his formula is connect to the cosmic companion, boldly name injustices, and state unequivocally that there must be a change. There must be a change. My research supported the necessity of acknowledging and naming the reality of our social circumstances. When we acknowledge the very existence of unfairness and inequity, it offers an important pathway to resilience. My participants said that we've got to acknowledge and name these inequities. We've got to name the inequity of inferior treatment. We've got to name the inequity of perception. We have to name the inequity of treatment, because when we name and acknowledge it, it is a pathway to resilience, which they defined as moving forward, fulfilling responsibilities, doing what you do best. As I was listening to Dr. King's blueprint, it sounded like my participants and his message converged together. Because he said, if you cannot fly, run. If you cannot run, walk. And if you cannot walk, fall. Move forward, keep moving forward. And that is the essence of resilience from the voices and perspective of older Black women. Older Black women. So this legacy of plainly naming injustice is linked to another inheritance from Dr. Martin Luther King. And that inheritance is what he called having a fierce urgency of now. In his sermon, Death of Evil on the Seashore, as well as in his I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King declared, now, not later, is the time to make changes. Now, not tomorrow, is the time to defeat the evils of injustice, inhumane oppression, and ungodly exploitation. Now, not later, is the time to make real promises of democracy. Now, not tomorrow, is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. Dr. King didn't just leave it. He said, if you continue to believe we are content and satisfied, get ready for a rude awakening. I just love his language. It's bold, it's audacious, it's powerful. If you believe, he said, we are content and satisfied, get ready for a rude awakening. He further said, we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. For those of you who are biblical scholars, you will recognize that is from the book of Amos, chapter 5, verse 21. Today, the third area of transformation is to use this fierce urgency of now to transform your tranquility. We've gotten quite tranquil. We've gotten complacent. We've gotten passive. Dr. King said we need to use this fierce urgency for transformation. And again, he tells us what this transformation should look like. Said, we must transform our tranquility, our complacency, our passivity to discontent and dissatisfaction. Doesn't that sound like, wow? Aren't we supposed to be working towards contentment and satisfaction? I thought that was what life was about. Well, Dr. King says no. He says we need to transform our complacency, transform our tranquility to discontent and dissatisfaction. Transform it not just for a moment. Dissatisfied not just for a moment, but until justice rolls down like water. So, your transformation begins now. Be entered in life. Be dissatisfied until justice rolls down like water. Not tomorrow, not later, but now. Finally, Dr. King had a legacy that he's left for us, a legacy of dreaming and imagining. It is easy to dream and imagine when things are wonderful, isn't it, you all? We can sit and we can have beautiful visions when things are great. But Dr. King's legacy was dreaming and imagining even in the midst of horrifying circumstances and conditions. Dr. King dreamed and imagined in spite of roadblocks, insurmountable obstacles, and a lack of solid, tangible proof or evidence that his dream would be realized. He didn't let anyone dictate nor constrain his dream. In fact, in his message, Unfulfilled Dreams, Dr. King noted that life is a continual story of shattered dreams. But despite the fact that your dreams may not be fulfilled, keep dreaming. Despite the fact that your dreams may be shattered, keep dreaming. Despite your dreams may be taking a long time, you got it. Keep dreaming. Keep dreaming. He noted, of course, because he told us to keep dreaming, and Dr. King always tells us how to make that happen. He said, we can keep dreaming in the midst of hardship, if we have what we call an even though faith rather than if and faith. Have an even though faith. According to Dr. King, an even though faith is built on knowing and believing God and trusting in God's power, irrespective of outcomes. This even though faith grows out of experiences, that is, historical experiences, experiences where we have seen God move in history and in our personal lives. Not surprising in my research, my participant also similarly noted that past experiences indeed have power. In fact, my participants know that past experiences become evidentiary, meaning they become the building blocks of knowing. So in current difficulties, experiences of the past become living reminders and testimonies. They become case files, documenting and enumerating the previous providential moves of God. Does anyone here today have a case file of your life that you can peruse and review in the midst of your hardship? When you peruse your own case files, you will get a lift in what Martin Luther King called even though fate. Your even though fate. Your case files will produce a place of knowing and believing. Therefore, like Dr. Martin Luther King and my participants, continue to dream and envision boldly with unshakable confidence, moving forward. Today, I stopped by just to share a couple notes of remembrance for transformation and not for information. Today, I invite you to remember and accept the inheritances of that. Conclude that remembering is a vital aspect of resilience. Remembering is transformative as it helps us navigate through hardships and difficulties. So today, I urge you to become an accomplice, not just an ally. Become an accomplice in the remembering. Stop by today to tell you, remember for transformation. And what do I want you to remember? I want you to remember Dr. King's legacy of standing unwaveringly for important ideals with God as your cosmic companion who transforms a numeric minority into a powerful majority. I came by to remember Dr. King's legacy of treating people as ends and not as means by honoring their humanity and inherent value. I came by to tell you to transform and actualize Dr. King's legacy of holding out and pushing forward, irrespective of obstacles and oppositions, while naming the reality of injustice and fiercely urging for changes now, not tomorrow, not later, now. Finally, I came back to say to you, transform your life by remembering Dr. King's legacy of an even though fate that fuels forward momentum in the midst of impossible obstacles, shattered and unfulfilled dreams. In closing, I want to use Dr. King's words from his sermon, "But if not," and say to you, let our remembrance of Dr. King's legacy stand as an epic that will remain forever stenciled on our mental sheets and on the mental sheet of every unfolding generation, not just for information, but for transformation. Thank you.